Stop. Her voice cut through the hall like a gunshot. The pen slipped from his hand, clattering on the floor. Flashes burst, gasps echoed, and the billionaire froze. For the first time in years, his polished mask trembled. He looked only at her, unknown, uninvited, yet with one word she stalled an empire. She stood as if the stage belonged to her. The plain dress did not hide the force in her eyes, and even in a room of power, she commanded it. He stepped forward, and the crowd felt heat, not just a contract, but a man trying to push into her space, her world, her life. For a breath, it looked indecent, like a forbidden scene unfolding in public. "This is wrong, and you know it," she said. Her voice was low but carried more weight than his fortune. He moved closer. Advisors whispered, investors fidgeted, cameras caught his every twitch. No one knew if he'd silence her or claim her. He only held her gaze, as if the answer lived inside her and nowhere else. Security shifted, waiting for his order. She lifted a small envelope. "If you sign, you don't just enter a deal. You enter me. My block. My people. My story. And you won't walk out the same." A ripple spread across the hall, scandal mixed with electricity. He picked up the pen, then set it down like a weapon. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someone who believes your words should cost more than your money," she said. The crowd inhaled. He felt the urge he always obeyed, force the door, own the moment, win at any price. But her stare held him still, warning of a price beyond numbers. 30 seconds, he muttered, unsure if to her or himself. She didn't flinch. "If you enter for the wrong reason, it will break you." The contract waited. So did the world. And with all eyes locked on him, he realized this was a door he couldn't buy, and crossing it might cost everything he thought he owned. The silence snapped when a man in the front row shouted, "Throw her out." Half the crowd echoed, half booed, all hungry for spectacle. Security edged closer, but the billionaire raised a hand. "No," he said, voice cutting through the chaos. Cameras zoomed in. Suddenly this wasn't a contract signing, it was a showdown. She didn't blink. The envelope in her hand trembled, but her eyes stayed locked on him. "You can sign and crush us," she said, "but you'll crush yourself too." Gasps erupted. Who was this woman? How dare she speak as if she knew his fate? The question ricocheted through the hall, and the billionaire felt it. She had just seized control of his stage. One of his investors stormed forward, face red. "She's nobody. Let's move on." The billionaire ignored him. Something in her presence pressed harder than 1,000 boardrooms. He leaned closer, his voice nearly a whisper, but the microphones caught it. "What do you want?" "I want you to keep your word," she shot back. "You said you never enter what you don't understand. Prove it. Open the books. Face the numbers." She shook the envelope. The audience surged to its feet, shouting, phones raised, live streams buzzing across the continent. An advisor yanked at his arm, hissing, "End this now. Every second costs you millions." He shook her off. Millions never made his pulse race, this did. The urge to dominate, to break through, was pulling him forward, and yet the danger in her words coiled tighter with every breath. "You think you're different?" he asked. "Every door opens when I push. Every wall falls. Why would you be any different?" "Because I don't open to money," she said, steady as steel. "And if you try to force your way in, it will destroy you." The crowd roared, some mocking, some cheering, none indifferent. For the first time in his career, he felt the floor tilt beneath him. The contract lay between them like bait, the pen a trap. If he signed, he would win the deal but lose something greater. If he refused, he risked losing everything he had built. The clock was ticking, though no one had said it. And everyone in that room knew one thing: whatever choice he made next, the world would never see him the same again. The hall shook with voices when a woman in a press badge suddenly climbed onto a chair. "He's lying," she shouted, holding up her phone. Security lunged, but too late, her live stream was already blasting across the internet. "We have proof," she yelled, pointing at the billionaire. Proof he knew exactly what this project would do to families like hers. Gasps crashed through the crowd. The billionaire's advisors panicked, shouting orders, trying to shield him from the storm. The girl with the envelope didn't move, she only lifted it higher, daring him to meet her eyes. Cameras spun wildly between the billionaire, the defiant girl, and the reporter standing above the chaos like a messenger of fire. He gritted his teeth. "Sit her down," he barked, but the reporter screamed louder. "This isn't just about numbers. It's about your signature on a deal that sells out the very city you claim to save." She waved her phone, its screen glowing with scanned documents. Half the audience booed her, half screamed support. The billionaire slammed his fist against the lectern, silencing the hall for one violent heartbeat. "Enough," he growled. But his voice cracked, not with fear, but with something more dangerous, uncertainty. The girl noticed. So did every investor in the room. "Look at him," the reporter yelled. "He doesn't deny it." Phones lifted higher. Live stream chats exploded. One trending phrase flashed again and again: "Is this the end?" His COO tugged at his arm, whispering frantically, "Leave now. We'll control the spin later." But he stayed. He couldn't. Something about that envelope, about the way the girl held it like a weapon she hadn't used yet, pinned him to the spot. "Open it," someone from the back screamed. "Show us." The girl's hand tightened, her knuckles pale. She looked at the billionaire, not the crowd. "Should I?" she asked him directly. It wasn't a plea, it was a challenge. He felt every eye drilling into his chest. If she opened it, he might be finished. If she didn't, he'd still be bleeding from the doubt now spreading like fire. For the first time in his career, the choice wasn't his alone. The envelope hovered in the air, the reporter still live, the crowd 1 second away from eruption. He swallowed, his jaw tight. Whatever was inside that envelope could burn everything, or expose something no one in this room was ready to face. And yet, against all reason, he whispered, "Do it." All eyes locked on the girl as she broke the seal. The billionaire's pulse hammered loud enough he swore the microphones could catch it. The reporter held her phone higher, shouting, "Show them. Don't let him bury the truth." The crowd surged forward, desperate, phones trembling like weapons. Her fingers slid into the envelope, pulling out a stack of folded pages. The billionaire leaned forward, his body caught between rage and fascination. "What's in there?" someone screamed. The room was suffocating with the weight of the answer. She hesitated, pages hovering above the lectern, just inches from revelation. He stepped closer. "You think you're ready to burn me with this?" His voice was sharp, but underneath was something foreign, fear. The girl lifted the first page, and the camera zoomed so close that every crease of paper filled the giant screens above. "Contracts," she said, her voice steady. "But not the ones you signed in public." The audience gasped. She didn't unfold the paper completely, only enough to flash a bold header, "Confidential Addendum." She pressed it flat against the lectern so only he could see the rest. His jaw tightened, color draining from his face. "What does it say?" the reporter shouted. The crowd roared, echoing the demand. He shook his head, gripping the edge of the lectern like a man clinging to a cliff. She leaned closer, her words low but caught by the microphones. "You know what it says. And you know why they can never see it." The roar of the hall collapsed into an uneasy silence, every breath suspended. He stared at her, desperate to read more, but she pulled the page back just as his hand twitched toward it. "Not yet," she whispered. The reporter cursed, shoving her phone forward. Investors shouted for answers. Security braced for a riot. The billionaire's mind screamed at him to seize the paper, to tear it apart, to end this. But something in her expression froze him, something that said she hadn't even played her strongest card. For one fleeting moment, the world thought it would finally see the truth. But instead of revealing it, she slid the papers back into the envelope and clutched it to her chest. The billionaire exhaled, half relieved, half crushed. The crowd erupted in fury, screaming, demanding. Yet all he could hear were her final words, spoken only for him. This isn't about one contract. It's about everything you've built. And if I open this fully, it won't just ruin a deal. It will ruin you. The crowd turned hostile, voices clashing like thunder. Show it. Open it now, one side screamed, while others demanded security drag her out. The billionaire stood frozen at the center, the envelope between them like a live grenade. Every camera, every screen across the country, locked on his next move. He reached for the mic, but his investor shoved past him, grabbing it first. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man barked, sweat pouring down his face, "this interruption is nothing but a stunt. A distraction from real progress." Boos and curses drowned him out. The billionaire tried to pull the mic back, but in the struggle it fell, screeching feedback through the hall. The girl didn't flinch. She pressed the envelope tighter to her chest. "If you silence me here," she shouted over the chaos, "I'll take this to every newsroom in the country. Do you really want them to know what you signed in secret?" The threat hit like a lightning strike. The crowd exploded. The billionaire's mind raced. For the first time in years, he wasn't in control. His empire had always moved on certainty, numbers, signatures, leverage. But here he was, shaking, trapped in a storm that no contract could buy him out of. His breath grew sharp, his chest tight. For a flash, he looked less like a titan and more like a man about to break. Security finally closed in on the girl. The audience cheered and booed at once, a wave of fury and confusion. She shouted again, voice raw, "He wants to enter my world, but he doesn't understand it. He can't survive it." The line shot through him, twisted, and lodged deep. The hall heard it too, gasping at the implication. He staggered back, hand gripping the lectern to steady himself. Whispers cut through the roar. Is he afraid? Is he finished? His advisors swarmed him, tugging, urging him to leave. But leaving would mean surrender, a headline he couldn't escape. Staying meant playing a game with rules he didn't know. The reporter was still live, the feed spreading faster than wildfire. Millions were watching now. He looked at the girl again, her eyes burning, her posture unshaken. She wasn't bluffing. Whatever was inside that envelope was powerful enough to bring him down. For the first time in his career, he felt something alien, sympathy. Not for himself, but for the people she claimed to fight for. He saw flashes, families evicted, clinics closed, broken promises buried in spreadsheets. And the guilt cut sharper than any loss he'd ever taken. He clenched his fists. He wasn't ready to admit defeat, not here, not like this. But deep down, he knew, if he couldn't turn this moment around, everything he had built would collapse before sunrise. The hall had nearly erupted into chaos when the reporter's voice cut through again. She was still live, her phone raised high, lens locked on the billionaire. "I have it too," she screamed. The crowd snapped toward her as if pulled by a magnet. Security lunged, but she dodged, waving her phone like a torch. These files, emails, signatures, proof he knew what this project really meant. The billionaire froze. His blood went cold. He hadn't touched those files in years. They were buried deep, hidden under layers of lawyers and non-disclosures. How did she get them? The reporter climbed onto a table, shouting over the mayhem. Families forced out, properties flipped, clinics closed. And his name is on every single page. She turned the screen toward the cameras, but just as the crowd surged forward to see, the feed glitched. A static buzz cut across the giant screens above the stage. Gasps filled the air. "What happened?" someone shouted. The live stream chat blew up in confusion, some screaming censorship, others swearing it was a hack. The reporter slapped her phone, cursing. The video stuttered back for half a second, enough to flash an email header, from Office of the CEO. Then it went black. The billionaire's chest tightened. He recognized that header instantly. It was real. It was his. His COO whispered frantically, "It's a fake, deny it now." But he knew it wasn't. And judging by the look in the girl's eyes, she knew it too. "Tell them," the reporter screamed at the girl. "Show the rest. Back me up." The audience chanted, louder, angrier. "Open it. Open it." The girl clutched her envelope tighter, her face unreadable. "Not yet," she said. The crowd booed, furious at the stall. The billionaire leaned forward, his voice like gravel. "Why are you waiting? What are you after?" She met his stare with steel. "Because the truth isn't ready for them yet. When it lands, it has to be undeniable." Her words hung heavy. The crowd erupted in confusion, some chanting her name, others screaming fraud. The reporter shouted again, but her stream stayed dead, her proof swallowed by silence. The billionaire felt sweat drip down his back. If those files surfaced, his empire would shatter. And now two women, one with an envelope, one with a phone, held his fate in their hands. He had survived markets, wars, scandals. But this was different. He whispered to himself, unheard by the crowd, "Who else knows?" And for the first time that night, he realized the worst truth of all: this wasn't just a fight on stage. Somewhere out there, beyond these walls, someone else already had the evidence. The billionaire's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down, just for a second, and the color drained from his face. A single text lit the screen: "We have more. Leave the stage or we release everything." No sender. No number. Just a threat written like a verdict. His pulse spiked, but he forced his expression into stone. He couldn't let the cameras see weakness. He raised the mic again, voice steadier than he felt. "This circus ends tonight. I built my empire on results, not rumors. If anyone wants to challenge me, do it with facts, not theatrics." The crowd split in two, half roared approval, half booed him down. For the first time all night, a few voices actually defended him. A small victory, but he grabbed it like air in drowning lungs. The reporter screamed, "You're lying," and waved her dead phone. But now the glitch worked in his favor. Without proof, her words felt thinner. He smirked, projecting confidence he didn't have, and the screens filled with his face again, sharp, unbroken, in control. Another tiny win. Then the girl stepped forward, holding the envelope high. "If you want facts," she said, "you'll get them. Just not tonight. Not until the people who matter are ready to see." The room hissed with fury, but her voice cut clean. "I won't let you twist this into another press stunt." Her restraint infuriated the reporter. "You're protecting him," she shrieked. But the girl shook her head. "No. I'm protecting the truth. Timing is everything." The billionaire seized the opening. "You hear that?" he said, turning to the cameras. "Even she admits she has nothing concrete yet." His investors nodded, clinging to the illusion of control. For a fleeting moment, it felt like momentum shifted back to him. But then another phone buzzed. This time it wasn't his, it was a journalist in the second row, who suddenly shouted, "Check your feeds. Someone's leaking live." Screens across the hall lit up with a new upload, blurred images of contracts, emails, addresses. The crowd gasped, turning on him again. His brief victory crumbled into ash. The billionaire's hands curled into fists. Every step forward was swallowed by 2 steps back. The stage felt like quicksand, every move dragging him deeper. Yet even in the chaos, he caught one thing: the girl wasn't watching the leaks, the crowd, or the reporters. She was watching him, steady, unblinking. Almost as if this was the moment she had been waiting for. The leaks spread like wildfire. Screens across the hall flashed with fragments, contracts half-blurred, emails with redacted lines. Enough to stir suspicion, not enough to convict. The crowd was boiling. What's real? What's fake? Voices shouted. Reporters barked into phones, editors screaming on the other end. The billionaire stood rigid, jaw locked. Every nerve told him to flee, but his instincts chained him to the stage. He had faced market crashes, lawsuits, betrayals, but this chaos was different. This wasn't about numbers. It was about him. The girl lifted the envelope again. The room hushed instantly. "Do you see now?" she asked, her voice sharp as glass. "What I hold isn't rumor. It's not a glitch. It's the piece that connects everything you've seen tonight." She tapped the paper against her palm, a rhythm that beat like a war drum. He clenched his teeth. "If you had real proof, you'd have shown it already," he said, forcing strength into his tone. But his eyes betrayed him. Because he knew, somewhere inside that envelope lay the key, the missing link tying the leaks to his name. She stepped closer. "There's a reason I haven't opened it yet," she said. "Because once this comes out, there's no going back. Not for you. Not for me. Not for anyone in this city." The hall erupted again. "Show it. Show it now." The crowd chanted, stamping their feet. The billionaire's investors shouted over them, trying to drown the voices, but it was no use. The energy of the room had turned into a tidal wave, and neither money nor muscle could stop it. For a moment, she unfolded a single page, just enough to flash a logo at the top, not the company's, not the government's, but something else. Something the billionaire recognized instantly. His stomach twisted. He knew that seal. He had seen it on documents buried so deep even his board never knew they existed. Gasps rippled through the hall. "What is that?" people demanded. She folded it back, eyes locked on him. "You know," she whispered. And he did. But no one else did, not yet. The truth hovered like a blade above his empire, ready to fall. He could almost feel the cut already, and worse, the world could sense it too. The crowd screamed for answers, but none came. The billionaire's voice stuck in his throat. She held the envelope like fire in her hands, and the only question now was when she would finally let it burn. The room shook with noise, but beneath it all was silence, the kind that presses on your chest before lightning strikes. The billionaire's eyes locked on the seal she had revealed, the one no one else recognized. To the crowd, it was just a mark. To him, it was the door to the one vault he could never let open. She held the envelope higher, and cameras zoomed so close the world could see her trembling hand. "This is the proof," she said, voice trembling but unbroken. "The moment he tries to cross into our world, this is what will break him." Gasps cut through the noise. The phrase echoed, "break him," and the audience devoured it. The reporter tried again to push forward, yelling, "Show it now." But the girl shook her head. "Not tonight. Not until he decides who he really is." Her words were fuel, setting fire to every theory racing through the live stream chats. What was inside? Who else was involved? How deep did this go? The billionaire tried to speak, but his voice failed. He gripped the lectern tighter, sweat dripping onto the polished wood. He had stood on stages across the world, commanding nations, investors, presidents. But tonight he was cornered, not by rivals, not by regulators, but by a girl with nothing but an envelope and the courage to hold it steady. The crowd began chanting, wave after wave, "Open it! Open it!" Their voices shook the ceiling. Security looked to him for orders. Advisors begged him to end it, to leave before the collapse. But he couldn't move. If he ran, he was guilty. If he stayed, he was trapped. She stepped closer, the space between them charged like an electric wire. "You built your empire on entering doors no one else could touch. But this one, you can't buy it. You can't break it. And if you try, it will ruin you." His chest rose and fell, heavy, uneven. He felt the floor tilt, the world watching, waiting for him to slip. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. Another message, anonymous, "It's already out there. The longer you stay, the harder you fall." He looked up, scanning the sea of faces, phones raised like torches. There would be no escape. Whatever was coming, he would face it here. The girl clutched the envelope tighter, her knuckles white. The world leaned in, breathless, waiting. And for the first time in his life, the billionaire realized he wasn't writing the ending. Someone else was. The billionaire's chest heaved as the chanting thundered, "Open it! Open it!" He stared at the girl holding the envelope, her hand trembling but unyielding. For hours he had dictated every stage he ever touched, but tonight, this stage dictated him. Slowly, she stepped forward. "You want to enter," she said, her voice echoing across the hall. "You want to claim what's mine, like every deal, every neighborhood, every life you've swallowed? Then see what it costs." She pulled the first page halfway out, just enough for the cameras to capture a single, devastating line, his signature above an agreement to shutter clinics in exchange for inflated land values. The room erupted. Reporters screamed. Investors cursed. Viewers around the world froze. The billionaire's face drained of color. It was true. He had signed it, years ago, thinking no one would ever see. The girl raised the page higher. "You thought you could enter my world the same way you enter every locked door, with money, power, arrogance. But this world isn't for sale. And the moment you tried, it broke you." The phrase echoed through the hall, twisting the scandal into something more profound. Phones buzzed, feeds exploded, hashtags trended in seconds. He wanted to deny it, to scream, but the evidence was there, undeniable. And then, something unexpected happened. Instead of ripping the papers open, instead of destroying him fully, she lowered the envelope. "I could finish you now," she said, eyes steady. "But this isn't about your destruction. It's about change. About proving that even the strongest empire can bend when faced with truth." The billionaire staggered back, his breath ragged. For the first time, he looked not like a titan but like a man facing himself. The silence of the crowd was crushing, waiting for his response. He gripped the mic, his voice cracked but real. "I was wrong." The words ripped out of him like stone breaking. Gasps shook the room. He had never admitted weakness in public, never surrendered ground. But now, he did. The girl nodded slowly. "Then make it right. Rebuild, not for profit, but for people. You can still rise, but only if you stop trying to enter worlds that don't belong to you." The billionaire lowered his head. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was a beginning. And in that hall, under the weight of cameras and history, the story ended not with a collapse, but with the first spark of something stronger, redemption. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or cry. But one thing was certain, they had just witnessed the moment when a man who once bought everything learned that the one thing worth entering, the truth, was the only thing that nearly destroyed him, and the only thing that could save him.